Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another recording of Hearthstone. Today is Wednesday, July 31st, and we are on the European account, which means as of this time, they've decided to roll over to the next day. So I made it to rank 14, which will start me at but apparently I was up to rank 13, so I fell down to 14. So we'll see what we got. Getting these rewards are nice, but they're not great. They're better than what we used to get, where you just get a card back and that was it. 15 dust and a couple of gold cards that I can turn to dust. It's not really where I'd like it to be. I like to get full packs, so now we were up to 14, we're down to 17. So we'll have to play some rank to get back up. And yeah, you win 5 games, you get your season chest of different levels. We've got to watch and learn, which will be interesting to see if we have any watch and learn opportunities here. Otherwise we need to play taunt minions and win warrior games. Let's see. I guess the cards that we just got want duplicates. They were just gold versions of things. So I can disenchant this easily for 50, and I can disenchant this for 100 to get the dust up, and disenchant that, and that's an uncraftable gold card. And since we have the new card back, we can make it our new favorite, as if anybody cares about that. Since today is Wednesday and this is European account, there's no reason for me to play the Tavern Brawl. We'll do that on Friday. Okay, now we've got the game screwed up visually. So we are just going to be playing Warrior. Unranked. Now the warrior decks were the one decks that didn't get rebuilt last time I rebuilt all the decks, because the website hsreplay.net was just not working. So I really don't know what's in my warrior deck. I really don't think it's particularly good. If you look at the win ratio here, it's like 1 victory to 2 losses, so or it was until it reset. So
you asked for it.
Victory!
I suppose if I do move over to the new Marvel game when it comes out, I'll lose hsreplay.net, and I'll lose the Hearthstone deck tracker app. I don't think that that's really going to be too much of an issue. I think almost certainly a new app will come out, and I would just have to learn how to use that and stream with that, and it would just be going back to the beginning, back to the old days of just playing the game and not having to have a perfect memory helper application, which I don't even use. I just put it there for streaming purposes. Alright, we don't have a ton of news, but we might as well just go through it, because I don't think we have a ton of stuff we can really do otherwise either. I could throw out friend requests after each game and see if we can get a watch and learn, but almost certainly what it's going to come down to is an instance of me doing that off screen. So we have a game here on Steam called Stop It Driving Simulation. There's going to be eventually a level of troll games that we run into. Let's see. This might be a joke troll game, or this might be some kind of driving simulator game that's supposed to indicate distracted driving or sleepy driving. Yeah, that's what this is. In part, this is drunk driving slash distracted driving simulation. So there might be a good purpose around this. It's discounted to $8.49, but it requires VR, and depending on how this is handled, this might be a joke game or a troll game. And if it is a simulation, as it says, it's probably not really a game so much. So that's another thing to consider. Let's see. Yeah, there's 3 modes: alcohol, smartphone, and driving fatigue. I guess I'll put this on the follow list in case I ever have a VR headset and am somehow dealing with somebody who needs to know not to be distracted on their smartphone or drink alcohol or drive fatigued. But yeah, that's kind of one of those custom software solutions that ends up on Steam instead of being sold separately as an educational product, which is where I think that really would break down to. On the other hand, I would say it's very nice that these kind of educational products in particular are coming out on Steam. It seems like more and more it's reasonable for a computer lab in a high school to have a Steam account. It's probably not super reasonable for a school lab in a high school to have a lot of VR headsets, but at least a Steam account. That makes sense.
Precision. Perfection.
There we go. Next we have a game on Steam called Cryptographer, which looks like it's a just pixel art 8-bit top-down platform jumper game. We've seen a lot better visually made platformers and frustration jumper style games. So in this genre, this looks very low effort. It says it has 50 puzzles, which is half as many as you would expect. You'd expect at least 100. It's discounted to $6.79, which is particularly expensive. And it has 14 achievements, which isn't even that many achievements, so if it was an achievement game, it's not really even selling itself well that way. What do I want to do? Let's try this.
Let's blow this place sky high.
Job's done.
That did not work at all. That's the worst card that I could have played. So yeah, Cryptographer not making it to the follow list. How did he get 3 of those on the field?
Light the fuses!
TechRaptor has an article here. Garfield Kart Furious Racing has been announced and you can pre-order on Amazon now. It seems like you can pre-order on Amazon almost any game that's been announced nowadays, and since TechRaptor has affiliate links, they seem to be kind of sleazily listing all of their articles like that right in the title. It is always kind of interesting to me, like, at what level is the fandom or the liking of Garfield is. Honestly, I suspect there isn't a lot of love for Garfield in general. I think it is just kind of a, if you have a slight fandom of them or you read the books when you were a kid, you're probably a pretty old adult at this point, and so maybe you're trying to get your kids into it, but I don't think your kids would be super into it.
My hand is too full.
Every 10 years or so, it seems like they try to do a new Garfield cartoon or movie, but there's only so much you can really get out of Garfield. Being a comic book, it's pretty bland and generic. There's not a major storyline plot. If you compare like an extremely long-running series like Garfield in comic strip form, compare that to something like The Walking Dead or Sandman or The Watchmen, there really is a huge amount of difference there. There was a intent to actually tell a story and have a beginning, middle, and end in things like the Sandman series, whereas Garfield never intended to have a beginning, middle, end. It always intended to just have a few comic panels that could be mixed and matched and aired in newspapers out of order. So yeah, Garfield has not evolved or developed, except for the I'm Sorry John horror take on Garfield that maybe is slightly being embraced in secret by the Jim Davis organization, as it were. Jim Davis, I believe, is the name that animated Garfield, although I don't believe he's actually animated Garfield in decades. I believe the original animation style of a large, fat, tabby cat was his animation style, and I don't think he ever grew out of that or got better. I think he hired other artists, and I think it's been admitted that he has other artists actually animating it, and so he's kind of just the guy in charge, the manager at this point. But yeah, the I'm Sorry John stuff is interesting because it's taking a kind of beloved saccharine sweet concept and turning it into a horrific concept. Garfield minus Garfield was a similar concept that existed well before that, but like there's kind of even with that sub spin-off that still doesn't really doesn't bring Garfield to the height of popularity. I don't think you really can. Like, I don't think you could do anything there, because if you did start telling a long-running story, people wouldn't like it. Or if you tried to change things, people wouldn't like it. The only thing I think maybe you could do is if Jim Davis actually died in the real world, then you could kill John at that point. But if you kill off John as the character without him fulfilling his story of getting together with Liz or in some way finding some kind of love interest, it's not going to be a very impactful or interesting story. What I would do if I was in charge of Garfield is either have him actually go through some kind of major event where he and Liz actually get together, or have him realize that he's never going to get together with Liz and find someone else to fall in love with. Have a marriage section, work up for a year to a marriage, work up through the marriage for a year or two, and then have like a pregnancy for a year, and then have like a daughter for a year, and then you could play on a lot of concepts of how would that family of pets and humans evolve and change, throwing in a lot more room for new conflict and new stories. And at that point, after all of that had been done, and that's like a 5 to 10 year process, then if Jim Davis dies, you have the funeral and have Garfield continue with Liz being the owner, or with the daughter character that was introduced being the main owner. Of course, then it becomes that the cat itself is Garfield. The cat is immortal, which inherently that's part of the problem too. Is that the series has been running so long that if it was actually running in real time, Garfield would be probably 30 to 40 years old, an unreasonably long living cat. Speaking of cats, like with the advent of the trailer for the Cats TV coming out, and the terrible CGI that nobody seems to like on that, it occurred to me, has any Japanese animation company ever tried to do cats? Because like in anime you see neko girls all the time, neko being the Japanese word for cat, I believe, where it's just an anime girl with cat ears and maybe a tail. So you could take the general concept of Mr. Mistopheles and all the other cats from the T.S. Eliot play story and the Andrew Lloyd Webber Broadway show, and put it in put that weird anime spin on it, and that would be actually something new and unique. I think particularly the problem with the movie is that they are not doing anything different, and this is the exact same thing you could say with like the Phantom of the Opera movies that have been made, is that they don't try to do anything visually different really, or better than what the Broadway play has been doing. So Broadway being a niche audience in the first place, I don't think that there's a lot of people out there that wants to see Cats or the Phantom of the Opera that couldn't have seen it at in some kind of showing, if not the New York Broadway on Broadway show. There's plenty of local theaters that have done Cats. So you have to take the general concept and expand it. Les Miserables as a TV series also, as a movie, also failed for that reason too. There's just the only reason I'd even say Sweeney Todd as a movie succeeded is because it had a Tim Burton-esque visual aesthetic to it. So there was certainly some elements there. Alright. Let's go ahead and add a friend request to this person. And let's see if we can cover the news and wait for this person to see if they will actually hop into a tavern brawl. Like, it shouldn't take them too long. All they have to do for this tavern brawl is pick 6 cards. So, yep. It's probably somewhat relevant since we were talking about the Garfield racing game being announced, that the Nitro Crash Team racing game, we'll have a story about it later, but it's it basically is putting in microtransactions after saying it wasn't going to do microtransactions. So people aren't too happy with it. Like Crash Bandicoot, a Crash Bandicoot racing game to be a Mario Kart competitor, that if it was coming to Steam, I don't know if it was or not, would have been appreciated. We still don't really have a great competitor to Mario Kart in any aspects. Like there's a Microsoft or PlayStation racing game that comes anywhere close. And I'd like to see some more open platformness. And if that has to come in the form of competition, then so be it. Meanwhile, while we're watching this watch and learn, which hopefully he'll win relatively quickly, Gamma Sutra has an article. U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods could raise the PlayStation console prices, warns Sony. This is probably dire warnings that any company would want to put out just to influence their best short-term interests. In the long run, if companies weren't run by stockholders and shareholders who only want to see like short-term gains, in the long run, a correction of how China and the US does business might be good, but in the short run, every single business person is going to say this isn't good, this isn't working. The PlayStation being built mostly in China is a problem, but it's been a problem forever. Inherently, the problem that many companies, including the US, definitely a major factor. The US is a major factor. The problem is, we as a first world country allowed outsourcing to third world countries, when what should have happened 100%, and this is what would have happened 200, 300, 400 years ago, is it was either impossible to ship or outsource goods or finished products or parts of products to other countries just because of the shipping costs and the slow boating times, or it was impossible because there was incredibly high tariffs. It used to be very, very common to have, if not full-on banning of certain products coming into countries like the United States 200, 300, 400 years ago. The tariffs were 400 or 500% of the value, so it would be ridiculous to do it. All labor and construction then and creation was being mostly done in the United States. Now, 200, 300, 400 years ago, also a lot of that was being done via slave labor, so that's another cheat we had. But all we've done is effectively, by removing tariffs and having more of a open world trade system, is export the slave labor to China, which inherently also exported a huge amount of market control and economic power to China that they didn't really deserve or shouldn't really have. So in a really, really long-running perspective, now there are people, whether they're migrants who aren't actually U.S. citizens or just low-income, high-skilled or low-skilled even people. There are plenty of people in the United States that, if you paid them minimum wage, could do the same jobs to assemble PlayStations. So the work could be done in the United States. It would just cost a lot more, which maybe that's just how the world should be. But before we even got to that point, that would be not a trade war between the United States and China. It would be just a blanket tariffs against all second world and third world countries. Because right now, what has happened is Nintendo has just moved some of their production outside of China into Taiwan, and there are plenty of other places where both Nintendo and Sony could just move production of their hardware whether it's Taiwan or South Korea, possibly even North Korea, India. There's plenty of places. There are some countries that are not politically stable enough to have that kind of economy, but are poor enough that if they became stable, would be good choices. And of course, automation at a certain point eliminates so many jobs that it might eventually just make sense to have the factories manufacturing everything directly in a country without it actually paying any employees, because it's just all automated. So it all boils down to a better argument for just everyone on the planet having a universal basic income. That makes a lot more sense. If capitalism eventually has to die, the idea of working 40 hours a week and earning a certain amount of money to support yourself and be able to live as a concept, that has to stop being the focus of what a society is about and how things are done. Moving on though, that's getting into an economics rant. TechRaptor has an article here. The Nintendo Switch sells 36 million plus units worldwide since launch. Now, this says million plus units, which I just assume means is 36. It should just say over 36 million, because when I read this, it almost feels like they're talking about their online service has sold 36 million subscriptions, when really it just means that they sold 36.87 million units. And then, in my mind, isn't a problem with being a little inaccurate in your title. So there's no problem with the Nintendo Switch selling 36 million units worldwide since launch. That's still a true statement. It's just not a 100% accurate statement, because it's not counting down to the exact number, which still they're not counting down to the exact number. For comparison, the Wii U sold 13.56 million during its lifetime, so you can see that the Wii U has been nearly tripled at this point. So the Switch is going well. The number one seller, according to this list, is Mario Kart 8 Deluxe at 17.89 million units, which basically means nearly a third, or over a third of everyone who owns a Switch owns that game. And then coming close behind, you have Super Mario Odyssey, a game worth playing, Smash Brothers, Zelda, which I'm a little surprised Zelda is beaten by Smash Brothers. Pokemon Let's Go Eevee, Let's Go Pikachu. Shows Pokemon's doing good, but not great. Splatoon, though, Splatoon 2 I would have thought was doing better. I believe the last update for Splatoon is out now, and we'll have an article about that later too. I think that's kind of the end of Splatoon 2, and we'll have to see if they make a Splatoon 3. Super Mario Party, and then Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe sold not great. 1-2 Switch didn't sell too good, and then Mario Tennis Aces. What this tells me more than anything, though, is that if these are just the top 10 Nintendo games, first-party games, which I assume that is, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if most AAA third-party games are somewhere between the 7 million and the 4 million sales point, and non-AAA, non-flag tentpole titles, I wouldn't be surprised if they're around the 2 million units sold. But even 2 million units sold, in my mind, is doing pretty good, because it seems like there's cause for celebration if a PC game does even 300,000 sales in a reasonable amount of time. And I don't feel like that there's a major difference there between what the
Marvelous.
the Nintendo sells and what the PC sells.
On the song.
I'm gonna look into this Laka TV, L-A-K-K-A. It's a different build of an emulator thing that I think that uses RetroArch. Laka apparently is on the Raspberry Pi, uses the libretro. So apparently Laka is the official Linux distribution of RetroArch and the libretro ecosystem. Well then, what is RetroPie then? A more general thing? Did we get our watch and learn there? No, we didn't. So, wait. Unfortunately, you're gonna have to wait and see if this guy can win the next game. Or I could play. Let's play. Let's play. I don't want to spend too much time doing this. Let's just play warrior, casual. We have some taunt minions we need to play, and we have some victories. Yeah, I'll do some more research into Laka. I suppose I can tell this sob story. My backup server, which I've been trying for 2 or 3 years to save it. It's been in bad shape in general. Inherently, there's a bunch of different sized hard drives in a 16 drive RAID array, and I could never get enough space to back up the files, and the files were a little bit corrupted too, so it didn't seem like it really wanted to work. And so I've finally, one too many hard drives failed, and I needed to reformat it. Basically what I needed to do is divide each partition on the hard drive into the least common denominator, because some hard drives have about 512 gigabytes on them. Some hard drives have 4 terabytes on them. So I need to break the 4 terabyte hard drives into 8 512 gigabyte drives so that the RAID can use all the space as best as possible. At least that's my theory on how this is set up, and I think that's the right way. And hopefully it did it in a certain smart way so it doesn't put the mirrored striped information on all on the same hard drive, in case the one hard drive fails and I lose 8 partitions. But once I just said forget it, I'm not going to be able to recover it because it was a ZFS RAID system, and I've never really worked with a ZFS up until this point, and just 2-3 hard drives were missing. I said forget it, this has just been a mess and I didn't want to deal with it, so I deleted effectively everything and started over from scratch. So now I have like a 35 terabyte gaping hole where my backups once were, and I do have like 2 hard drives that maybe some of that is copied over, but I don't think a lot of it has, and it's just something that I needed to probably start over from scratch on. So yeah, a major amount of data lost, but it really doesn't affect my YouTube channel anyways. I was never really backing up anything other than my PC, my gaming PC, to that drive. I wasn't backing up video in particular. I don't believe I'm approaching 8,000 videos on my YouTube channel now. I don't believe that even if I downloaded the compressed versions of those videos on YouTube, I don't think that I would have enough space. And when you are at a 35 terabyte level, there's no easy way to back up to anything. So I'm still in the same position where it's like, if this hard drive, if this RAID array backup server screws up again, then there's no way to really support it or fix it. I'm just hoping everything works well enough that I can,
What a tragedy!
as the 512 gigabyte drives fail, I can put in 4 terabyte drives and expand the size more and more, and slowly, if everything just decides to fail at different times instead of failing at the same time, and if I actually manage to focus on fixing things instead of ignoring the problem, then I'll eventually be able to just grow it more and more and increase the potential safety of it more and more, or stability of it. So yeah, the only thing I can foresee is that as I'm trying to rebuild files from potentially a decade to 3 decades, or no, a decade, maybe even 2 decades from now, I might end up trying to download things and using a lot of my bandwidth, but I doubt it. I think more likely just working on the system will distract me a little bit. The one hard drive that does have some backups that I'm copying over it was like, alright, come back in 8 hours and this will be done. Alright, so that's really how it's going to work for a couple of the drives that did have some small amount of backups. But I don't think I had everything. I definitely think I lost a lot of stuff.
Job's done.
Which kind of sucks. But I don't think too much of it was irreplaceable, but almost certainly some of it was irreplaceable. But I at a certain point in projects, and this is something that I'm probably not the best at learning, at a certain point in projects, giving up and starting over again is the right way to do things, and nobody really likes that, but sometimes it is. It's the truth. It's just like, I could have thought about it for a week. I could have said, oh, maybe there is a way to recover this, but what I would have been recovering still would have been corrupted data and nothing. And when looking up like the ZFS recovery searches, it seemed to pretty much say that actually no, there's nothing you can do. You're just going to end up having to lose these files and restore from a backup, and I didn't have a backup, so that's a problem. Like, inherently backing up the backup server is the problem. So the next thing I would need to do, and it would probably cost me, I suspect, $1,000 or more, would be to build a second backup server, put it directly on top or below my current backup server, and have it just automatically back up all of its data in totality without running any of the internet connected services onto it. which would be very redundant, certainly, and it wouldn't stop things like a fire or an electrical short, so that wouldn't be a smart move. It'd be better to build a secondary backup server and put it in someone else's house and have it connect over the internet, but then that would also require a ridiculous amount of data. You could do it though. You could have it back up everything once on the first backup server in your house, and then you could have it then ship it or move it to a different person's location, and then it would just be making the small minute changes, but the small minute changes might be particularly large anyways. Let's see. And we lost the guy who was playing, so we'll try and send a friend request and see if they accept it. And while we're waiting to see if they will accept it, we have a Gamma Sutra article here. Nintendo's 3DS plans remain unchanged as unit and software sales slow. Unchanged in my mind means, yeah, they plan not to really support the 3DS and push everybody to the Switch. Nintendo's not going to say that out loud, though, as long as they're still making games for the 3DS, or people are still making games for the 3DS. Effectively, the 3DS is the new Vita. Yep, he didn't accept, so let's just jump into it again. There's third-party titles still going to be made for the 3DS. Now, this might also be somewhat separate from the new 3DS and the new 2DS game consoles. But yeah, everybody is going to be pushed pretty quickly to getting a Switch Lite, and the focus clearly is going to be the Switch. Of course, one of the factors here is that Pokemon was supposed to be a game system seller. Pokemon was supposed to be a system seller, and it's not so much a system seller. If we're gonna play taunt things, let's try Mech Hunter and see if that brings out more taunt minions. So yeah, a major thing you could do to jump or move from the 3DS to the Switch Lite would be to have had to make or have the I'm gonna hold on to all these, but none of these are taunt. Yeah, make a very good Pokemon game, make a very good system seller, so everybody would be so hyped up on that game that they wouldn't have even bothered or thought about the 3DS or the new 3DS anymore. Moving on, Gamma Sutra has an article. Live service has brought EA 2.5 billion in net bookings in the last 12 months. So EA is evil with their live services / microtransactions / always online games, but they're making bank for it. So it's kind of an indication that there's still a lot of people that are not really supporting, enforcing, or admitting to a need for a boycott of live services in general.
That is incredible.
Almost certainly a significant amount of this is from FIFA, but also some of it's from Battlefield and Battlefront. The EA Sports, I don't know what other EA Sports games even would be involved in that. But all I can really say is if you don't want games to have live services in them, then you have to actually stop buying games and stop supporting games that have live services in them, or that are live services games. Like, it's really what it just all boils down to. Right.
Ooh, I wonder what this
And
does.
you can't really do the middle ground
I
of
wonder
saying,
what this does.
well, I buy the game but I don't buy any of the microtransactions. It doesn't seem like that matters at all. You have to just not buy the game in protest in general. Moving on, Gamma Sutra has an article. The PlayStation 4 has shipped 100 million units faster than any other console. I guess 100 million units for the hardware is particularly a large number because the PlayStation 4 has been out for a while, and yeah, I guess it takes a really long time to ship, and ship means it went to a store, not that somebody actually bought it, but effectively you're assuming somebody will buy it.
Well played.
Job's done.
Yeah, I don't really need victories.
Unity, precision, perfection.
So I need taunt minions, so let's see if we can find a taunt minion. And when you play tracking, you discard the other two cards, so yeah, these. I'm gonna let this one just keep on playing. So if you see that the PlayStation 4 has shipped 100 million units hardware-wise, and then you see that the most sold first-party Nintendo game is selling
Well played.
at is selling 10, maybe 20 million units, you can see that there is a 5-to-1 ratio between the potentially most popular game out there on a console and the console's popularity in general, which that makes sense. Certainly, it's not unrealistic to believe that
My sincere
that there are 5 different kinds of gamers out there that don't overlap much at all. A lot of people out there just playing FIFA, just playing sports games, just playing 1 or 2 first-person shooters. A lot of people out there that use consoles mostly just to stream Netflix and maybe play 1 or 2 games. That being said, the 5-to-1 ratio there could be improved, certainly too. I think there's room for there to be a lot more variety out there. As it is right now, there isn't, I think, a big audience of people that buy the PS4 just to play visual novels, because I don't think visual novels come to consoles at all. There isn't probably a lot of people that buy consoles to play mahjong games or card games or anything like that. So that there's several categories that are still mostly PC focused. And the reason that people buy PCs are way more than 5 different reasons. There's all kinds of games and players out there that play PC. Moving on though, TechRaptor has an article. Dragon's Quest Heroes join. Dragon's Quest Hero is the name of the character, joins Super Smash Bros. Ultimate today. Okay, so more Smash Bros. Updates and new characters being added. Yay. Yay for people that play that game. Right. So we gotta get rid of this. And this.
I don't have enough mana.
There we go. TechRaptor has an article here. Merchant of the Skies, a sky tracking simulator, launches into early access tomorrow. If this is supposed to be it's a sky trading simulator and not tracking simulator. I was thinking of that. I was like, how can it be a sky tracking simulator? I think we already saw this on Steam, or maybe I just clicked on the link. Looks like a weird game. Looks like it's probably a little too surreal for most people to want to play, and it's very possibly just a joke troll style game. But maybe there's something to it. Well, I'll keep an eye out for it. This. Next, we have a game on Steam called Harvested. It looks like it's a top-down... What is that game? Roguelike, maybe? Top-down, really zoomed-out RPG. Whatever it is, visually, it's not impressive at all. It's early access, discounted to $12.74. It says it has English full audio. I doubt that, though. It's tagged as a strategy game. A lot of dark screenshot syndrome happening in this. A lot of just things hidden behind blankness. Yeah, that's not making it to the fall list.
What is my purpose?
Well played.
Yeah, this is not really playing any taunt minions any faster than I think I was doing before. I think it is just worse. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Fight for Freedom. This, by the name alone, I assume is a low effort asset flip first person shooter militaristic game. We haven't seen a lot of just straight up military games. It's all been going for the PUBG Battle Royale mentality. Yeah.
Well played.
Patriotism, I guess, does not really sell too well, and this doesn't seem like it's really trying to sell on that either. $3.39 discounted, English with full audio, I doubt, and a third-party end-user license agreement. That's not making it to the fall list. It would be kind of funny, I suppose, if the U.S. Department of Defense started funding just tons upon tons of Army games. I know that they do have something I think called Army the Game that I don't think is on Steam. But if we just one year saw that there was 20 or 30 AAA shooters that were just rah the US, it would be so blatant and obvious and ridiculous that there would be more of a backlash than it would be worth. But we kind of see some of that happen with other games from other countries. but not a lot. It's usually a little bit more underlining and less easy to point out. Even China, who's probably the most notorious censor, doesn't pay people to make pro-Chinese military games. They just don't allow people to make anti-Chinese military games, or anti-Chinese anything games. Next, Oxygen Not Included is finally out on Steam, out of early access. It's been in early access, I think, for a rather extremely long time, and it's one of these games where you're, if we can get anything to load, you're digging through a planet and doing kind of a Fallout Shelter style or Tiny Tower style of game. It's a simulation tower management game in space from Clay Interactive. It's discounted to $16.74. I don't think I like these kinds of games though. In the long run, I think that's really what this just boils down to, is after playing Superco, I don't feel like I have it in me to want to play Oxygen Not Included, even though it's overwhelmingly positive. But you know what? I'll be generous. I'll put it on the fall list and I'll think about it. Maybe this is the one game that is so good that it actually deserves to be covered. Interesting languages support here: English, Chinese, Korean, and Russian. If I didn't know better, I would call this potentially a troll game. But whatever. Now I'm going to put this on the fall list and see if maybe this is the one. Let's move on. We need to kind of hurry up. Next, we have a game on Steam called Tower Tale, which I think is probably a 4-player hack and slash beat 'em up game in the same vein as Castle Crashers, which is a particularly old game. Looking at the video here, it seems like it's might be alright. It seems to be a little bit more focused on fighting one boss or one enemy at a time more than fighting a bunch of people, which puts it more closer to a boss rush game than anything else. Yeah, it feels actually like it's more of a boss rush game. It's tagged anime and anime RPG. I wouldn't really call this art style anime at all. Discounted to $7.19. They're giving away free copies on Twitter. English only, 20 achievements. I'll put this on the follow list. We'll see if people buy this and like it. I could see it going either way, frankly.
What now?
Let's see. Let's see.
I must choose. The blade be thirsty. Job done.
I think we've talked about this game a little too much at this point, but Gamatsu has an article. Senran Kagura Peach Ball for PC launches August 14th. This might be the first time that the PC version has had an actual release date. That being said, it's still a Senran Kagura Ninja Girls, although they're in animal outfits in this time. In this game, it's a pinball game, so you're mostly playing pinball. Again, a game I very possibly could get on Steam, and well, I can get it on Steam. I could probably play it and put it on YouTube, is what I meant to say. but it would just be a pinball game, and I like pinball games, so that would be fine. But it also inherently, I purchased a lot of pinball arcade games that I have yet to get around to playing or covering. So there's better pinball arcade games out there that I could be talking about.
Let the pain speak to me.
Next, we have a game on Steam here called Warhammer 40k Inquisitor, or Warhammer 40,000 Inquisitor Prophecy. This is already rated mixed. It does seem like the Warhammer series is a mix of a series, and arguably it also seems like that the Warhammer series is not so much a series made by different people under the control of one organizations. More it feels like the Warhammer name is just licensed out to anyone and everyone who wants to make a game. This is $22.49 discounted, third-party account required, English full audio with a bunch of other languages supported. Does have single player and multiplayer, but I am not sure that this is much more than a kind of Diablo-esque clone game in the Warhammer universe, which I think you probably, even Diablo 3 when it came out felt old, and you need to, if you're gonna make a dungeon crawler Diablo style game, you need to do some major improvements and tricks. I don't really see a reason to put this on the fall list. I think where I am at with the Warhammer series is I am not at a position where I think it needs to exist or needs to be on the follow list. So yeah, I'm not even gonna bother to put it on the follow list. Next article we have from TechRaptor, QuakeCon 2019, Doom, Dreamcast, Dragon Chocolate, and more. This seems to be just an article talking about what happened at QuakeCon, which these images don't want to load. Personally, as somebody who did not do any research or see any of that, see of what happened at QuakeCon, what I take from QuakeCon is that they did a particularly terrible job of re-releasing Doom 1 and 2 and 3 for as much as you can re-release 3, and they did a particularly terrible job of hyping people up to want to play Doom Eternal. If I am correct in assuming that it is all ZeniMax Bethesda that owns Wolfenstein also, they did a pretty terrible job about how am I trying to say this? Promoting and continuing Wolfenstein as a series too, because everybody I've heard that has anything to say about Wolfenstein Youngbloods hates it. Everybody who has anything to say about Wolfenstein Cyberpilot hates it. These were two projects that did not need to be released at all in their states. And there's other ways to certainly have released Youngbloods. Youngbloods could have been a free DLC element that happened later.
Somebody order a bomb.
Listen here. Bring the pain.
There we go. As for what this article is about, they're talking about chocolate they found. They're talking about just what they did at QuakeCon. And kind of inherently, this is part of the problem of QuakeCon as a gaming convention. It doesn't really work. It's more of a, oh, my friends go to QuakeCon, so I want to go to QuakeCon convention. And as fewer and fewer people are in that situation, I think fewer and fewer people will have any real reason to want to go to QuakeCon. QuakeCon 2 years ago would have been better off moving to a Nintendo Direct style announcements, just with no convention and nothing else in it.
Magic neutralized.
That would have worked a lot better. Burn. There we go. Tech Raptor has the Wolfenstein Youngblood review, old meets new. Let's see. Oh, you just drew a bomb. I'm gonna play Paladin and just hope that the Paladin might have some taunt minions in it. So, on this review, as we scroll down to the bottom, we'll see just the thing. It's full of microtransactions, we've already mentioned that. But they gave it a 7.5, very good. They say is more or less just as good as its predecessor, but it's implementing some new gameplay features. Leave the tiniest imperfections in an otherwise excellent game. They say pros graphically and technically superb, lots of guns, upgrades, and abilities, fairly replayable, intense and fast gameplay. Cons, occasionally jarring tone shifts, samey open world locations, unnecessary RPG mechanics, and upgrades are slow to obtain. I think we even talked about this article. What you could make a meta statement here, while TechRaptor is oddly giving it a high review compared to the few other mainstream video game journalists I've seen that have given it a pretty terrible review.
Job's done.
What you can make the meta commentary though is inherently mainstream video game journalists are mostly SJWs who want to put politics in every single video game, identity politics in particular, not just politics. So you have a game series like Wolfenstein, which the basic one sentence description is, it's a game where you shoot Nazis, the bad guys from World War II. Gotta remember, this is YouTube, we can't say that word. Or we're at least pretending like we can't say that word. That's what Wolfenstein 3D is about. That's what Wolfenstein before that was, I assume, about. That's what every Wolfenstein game we've ever seen is about. So that should be extremely popular, and although it is slightly political, I guess, it's not really that political. So you would think then that all the SJWs would jump behind this series and promote it and support it like crazy, and they would write articles going, this is the game everybody wants, this is the game everybody loves, even if it's not that good. That they would get some extra slack, that they would get some preferential treatment. But that's not really what is happening here. People are hating the game because it's a bad game, fairly. But they're also, in part, not giving it any special preference or treatment because the truth is, only hate and anger sells. And they know it. So they are really never going to applaud a game for this instance, particularly if it's a AAA game, but they will hate on AAA games that don't do what they say. So yeah, it boils down to SJWs will never be satisfied, and you can't satisfy them. They're not the real video game market, and if you pander to them, you still don't get any reduction of the grief and frustration. I'm sure there are some articles out there saying Youngbloods isn't anti the bad guys from World War II enough, or isn't political enough, and it's just like it will never stop. It will never stop. And there's a slight difference here from how things were done even a couple years ago, because before we had things like Butterfly Soup and Dream Daddy and Lady Killer in a Bind, all identity politics, pro LGBTQ games. I think Butterfly Soup is LGBTQ also, but it also was like pro Muslim, so they're pro that too as a minority class. So all of those games though were heavily written about and overemphasized about, and in part that might be mostly have been pushed by one, maybe two, maybe just a handful of people. Laura K. Buzz on Twitter, who was running Kotaku Europe, which was running some of it. I don't think she's actually writing any articles these days, so maybe her just not being in a video game journalist or mainstream video game journalist has shifted the balance somewhat. But it would be questionable if a new Dream Daddy Dad Simulator came out, or a sequel to Lady Killer in the Bind or Butterfly Soup came out. It'd be interesting to see if they get any kind of slack or special treatment like they were getting before, or if it is now just the case that over the past year or two it is now just complaints only sells, complaints only, never accolades, even if you're giving false unneeded accolades. So it'll be interesting to see if anything gets, like, even not just an identity politics article. It'll be interesting to see if any mainstream journalists have anything nice to say about any game in the next 6 months or so, because they may have just gone to full negativity. Moving on though, I want to try and burn through this stuff. Gamatsu has an article here. Turok 2 Seeds of Evil for the Switch launches August 9th. This is the remastered Turok 2 being added to the Switch, which I'm pretty sure the remastered Turok 2 came out at least 6 months ago, if not longer. It's a little weird to see a game just coming out for the Switch version just because, but I guess whatever. It makes some sense too, to try and keep on selling games. Next we have a game on Steam called Lunchapalooza, which looks like a player versus player game where you're on different platforms fighting as pieces of food.
Now how about...
Now the video was zoomed in, but this actually looks like it's pretty zoomed out. It says early access for $12.99. Bunch of languages supported. Single player and local multiplayer. No online player. Multiplayer. I don't really see a big reason why you'd want to play this. It seems like it's another attempt to be the next big Smash Brothers clone type game, but I don't think that they have a smart enough concept here to do something different or interesting. So, it's not the kind of game I would cover and play because it's a multiplayer focused game, but I don't think I'd put it on the fall list anyways.
For justice.
We have on Steam that game we already Tech Raptor talked about, Merchant of the Skies. I suppose I can put it on the fall list. We can see.
I can't win them all.
We can see what happens there. Three more taunt minions. I just have nothing with taunt in it. Next we have a game on Steam called Codex Timondera Lost Vision. This looks like this is just an RPG Maker game. It is widescreen though, I have to applaud that. And yeah, it just looks like an RPG Maker game. Even if this wasn't made in RPG Maker, and I will give it credit that this animation looks good, and this animation looks pretty good. Not great, and I will give it credit that this looks like this is a full inventory system. And here you have another anime girl. A thematic reason that her chest plate would be this way, so that she could fire a bow and arrow easier. But I think actually it's backwards. I think the story that I think might be apocryphal, as in not true, is that Amazonian women would cut off or iron or flatten one breast so that they could shoot these bows and arrows better, but the breast would be this one, not this one, because if a bowstring were to catch, it would certainly be painful. That's what this guard here is, and this glove here is for, although this guard is in the wrong place too. So, like, I used to be in the archery, so I know somewhat of that.
I must move quickly.
Alright, we've got two taunts on the screen right now.
Converting stored energy.
Regardless though, this is the problem with these games, is that you cannot, in my mind, make games that look like this. They're so zoomed out and so retro pixelated in their graphics. This is discounted to $11.99, and it's an English and German game. If you had nostalgia for something like Final Fantasy 1, 2, or 3, and you've played those games so many times you can't possibly play them anymore, a game like this might be for you. But for most people, this is just going to look really old, and there's no guarantee that there's any quality in this at all. This could be a great game, storyline wise and gameplay mechanic wise, but you wouldn't be able to tell from the visuals. So the visuals have to sell. Frankly, visuals for me have to sell 3-4 other aspects of a game. It has to sell the gameplay mechanic, it has to sell the story, it has to sell the characters, it has to somehow imply that there's a chance that the music is good, just on the level of the quality of the visuals, because I'm not listening to the audio. So it has to show that a lot of effort was put into it. And a lot of games don't. They take the lazy, easy path of just having things that are easy to animate and look retro. Where's my cursor? Next game we have on Steam is called Raiders of the North Sea, which looks like it's a board game that's been turned into a PC game. It has an art style to it, so There might be something here. This is gonna come down to, is this based on a real world board game, or is this a brand new board game style of game being done in a digital fashion? And that really is gonna just boil down to people buying it and reviewing it. It's $14.99, which is pretty expensive. It does have single player, but it requires a third-party account and a third-party end-user license agreement. And I think with that, I'm going to say no. Like, it's asking way too much to put it on the fall list. I was going to do it, but when you require a third-party account and you want $15 for a board game I'm not even sure I'm sold on, that's not where how I want to be treated as a customer.
Converting stored energy.
Let's go!
Next we have a game on Steam called Anti-Corpse VR, which seems to be a VR stand in one place, shoot at things, maybe place some traps around the area. I really don't like the graphics. It's very red, it looks very low polygon and asset flippy, and none of the images want to load. So yeah, looking at these stills, it's just way too much red. I think maybe the idea is that this is inside the bloodstream of somebody and you're acting as an antibody, but it being visually presented in that red theme is not visually appealing. And if you are surrounded by blood, that's a little macabre. $10.39 discounted. English and French requires VR. Yeah, not enough polish here, not enough polygons for this. Alright, I think I've got it.
Access denied. Photonic burst.
Give that menu turn to get ready.
We have TechRaptor's Wolfenstein Cyberpilot review, and let's just jump down to the bottom and see what it said. I think we also looked at this, so I might be showing some duplicate things. Yeah, they say that's a 3.5 bad, so even for TechRaptor, they were not satisfied by that game. Yeah, Cyberpilot in particular should have not made it out the door. I could think Youngbloods could have been a free DLC element for Wolfenstein 2, something along that line, instead of selling it and having microtransactions in it. But Cyberpilot should not have been shown to the public. Game Sutra has an article, PlayStation 4 software revenue dips as hardware ships hits a major milestone. So notice how Game Sutra takes the previous article that says they sold over 100 million and puts the spin on it, well, software is not selling that well, which is a different way to write the article, certainly, and both may very well be 100% accurate and true statements. It's just how you want to present the news and make conclusions that maybe you can't back up. Let's see.
Got something to hide?
Sorry. Game Sutra has an article, Garfield Kart Furious Racing announced for the PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC, due out November 5th, in North America November 7th. I guess the hope now is that Garfield Kart won't have microtransactions in it because Nitro Crash Team Racing does. I guess that's what you're hoping for.
justice.
Just in the turn there. YouTube advertising department put out this picture that's huge. Branded content over 10 million long has nearly twice the engagement of that around 1 to 3 minutes long. So, yeah. Don't try to make 1 to 3 minute long branded content, which probably means shows and not just random people seeing 1 to 3 minute long ads. Now, since that's being told to YouTube advertisers, that might be a direct statement telling advertisers to make 10-minute long ads that are skippable, hopefully skippable, instead of making 1 to 3 minute commercials. I think it's probably pretty important to point out that people don't want to see commercials, period. They don't care how long it is, because they'll just find a way to ignore it regardless. But yeah, if you start showing 10-minute commercials, people would be very upset. So they continue in an article here, how to create long-form videos that will keep people watching. As for my videos, last time I looked, the retention is somewhere around, on average, 3 or 4 minutes, which is probably not as good as it should be. By far, it probably should be double that, but those numbers are the combination of everybody who clicked on the video and then immediately clicked off of it, and people who watched the entirety of a 3-hour video. There. And so we are done with this recording. The watch and learn I'll have to probably do off screen, and there's not really a big reason why I need to even get it done before Friday. That's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below in the description. And if you want to support me even further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.